Hello, I'm Lawrence and I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond, and one of those memos pertains to food. Specifically, food dishes that I only encountered after moving to the United States. And I'll be honest with you, those of you who have seen my food-related videos in the past will know that this video could be a list of 150 food dishes. So I've kept it to 6 in the hope that if it's successful, we'll do a part 2 and a part 3 and a part 4. You get the picture. Now, before we look at the dishes in question, if you've not had a chance to subscribe to this channel, do that now! In the meantime, here are 6 food dishes that I never encountered back in Britain, but did so once I moved here. Before I became a resident of the United States, the words clam and chowder very rarely found themselves emanating from my mouth. And similarly, the food item in question very rarely entered it. In fact, it never did, because clam chowder is, of course, a dish that is specifically synonymous with American cuisine and, even more specifically, Northeastern cuisine. And for my non-American viewers who might be thinking, what the heck is clam chowder? Hopefully not at such a high frequency. Clam chowder is basically a chowder soup that contains clams. Was that really so difficult? And perhaps appropriately for somebody from Old England, I'm most familiar with New England clam chowder. And you might be thinking, ooh, Lawrence, but I thought you lived in the Midwest. And I do live in the Midwest. But something that you need to know about the United States is that while it does have a lot of sort of regional dishes that remain regional to that region, some dishes start life regionally and then make their way across the country. And the same is true of clam chowder. And I remember having it for the first time at a very expensive seafood restaurant. And before you go, oh, Lawrence, it sounds like somebody's getting a little too big for their boots. This was 10 years ago. In Indianapolis. And to prove to you that I remain a completely down-to-earth YouTube sensation, the only other time that I've had clam chowder was in a mall. Because this is America, where there are more food courts than legal courts. That's probably not true. If you'd have asked me 20 years ago, Lawrence, what is Meatloaf? My answer would have been unequivocal. Meatloaf is that actor that was in Fight Club. The same guy that used to sing power ballads written by John Steinbeck. I think I was supposed to say Jim Steinman. But during the harsh winter of 2008, was it really that? It wasn't that bad. I was introduced to a food item by the name of meatloaf. And it is literally, as the name suggests, a loaf of meat. Smushed together with other ingredients until it forms the shape of, well, bread. Which I've just realised is the name of another 70s rock group. And, just like with bread, it's usually served in slices, which is something I wish somebody would have told me before I tried to eat it with a spoon. Anyway, meatloaf, the food, is not something that most British people would be familiar with, but in doing a little bit of research for this video, I discovered that haslet, which is a cut of meat that originated in my home county of Lincolnshire, is itself a type of meatloaf that doesn't enjoy anywhere near the ubiquity, a word that they dared me to get into the video, that meatloaf does in the United States. While some of the dishes on this list came to my attention more or less immediately after I moved to America, there are some I only found out about in the last couple of years. And indeed, those of you who were watching my channel 2 years ago will know that this includes a dish called chicken fried steak. In fact, if it hadn't been for my collaboration with a Scottish YouTube sensation by the name of Sean, I might to this day have no idea what that is.
Chicken fried steak, have you ever heard of chicken fried steak?
Never heard of it, where did you see that?
There was in this diner and it was, I didn't know if it was chicken or steak, but I think it's beef.
Anyway, don't take my word for it. Instead, here's me from 2 years ago with more details. That's amazing. It's the gravy that makes it, but I'm just going to try a little piece without gravy to see what that's like. Yeah, even without gravy, it's definitely still fried. But Sean was right. I mean, this is pretty phenomenal, and I think that, you know, if I could, I'd eat one of these every day, but I'd go into cardiac arrest. Perhaps the biggest surprise is that while it does indeed contain steak and while it is indeed fried, there is no chicken. And speaking of chicken, guess what's for dinner? I'll give you a clue. It arrived courtesy of today's sponsor, Factor 75. And I say arrived because for me that's the best thing about Factor meals. After a day of filming, editing and waking up at 11 in the morning, a YouTube sensation like me doesn't always have time to prep his own dinner. Or wash a cheese grater. And even if I did, the only thing that I have in common with Gordon Ramsay is that I'm English. And I swear a lot. I just happen to believe that cooking is best left to those that know what they're doing. And Factor 75 evidently does, because their meals, which include filet mignon, shrimp, and blackened salmon, are of restaurant quality. Better yet, they're literally ready in 2 minutes. And with 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week, my fridge is never lacking in variety. Head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code LITP50 to get 50% off your first Factor box and 20% off your next month of orders. That's code LITP50 at factor75.com to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month of orders. There are no two ways about it. Americans are obsessed with chili. You might be thinking, Lawrence, the transition slide didn't say anything about chili. What are you talking about? Well, chili in this country is often accompanied by a side dish that seems particularly popular with my wife's family, cornbread. And just to be clear, since there seems to be a pattern emerging here, that is not corn as in the new metal band. No, corn as in cornmeal, which is the chief ingredient of cornbread. And it's pretty nice when it's not green, which is an allusion to a video I made in which it was. Either way, cornbread is one of many examples pointing to America's obsession with corn. At the state fair you have corn dogs, at Halloween you have candy corn, and in everything you have corn syrup. For most of us Brits who relocate here to America, hearing the word biscuits and gravy in the same sentence is profoundly frightening, because there are two things that I think most of us don't know until we move here. Number one, the gravy in question is usually this sort of thick, white concoction that's quite spicy. Compare this to the gravy that we're used to back home, provided by the likes of Bisto, which is a darker, thinner kind of liquid. But the other major difference is the way in which Americans define the word biscuit. In Britain, of course, a biscuit is what Americans would call a cookie. So perhaps you can see why the term biscuits and gravy might make us do a bit of sick. Until we learn that in America, a biscuit is a form of savoury baked bread that they push on you a little too much at Red Lobster. And I say too much because American-style biscuits are actually really nice, and I have been known to devour 6 or 7 of those before my fish and chips arrives. Of course I still eat the fish and chips. Do you think I'm a psychopath? And I must say, since it is a popular dish here in the Midwest, biscuits and gravy is actually quite nice once you overcome the initial trauma. And finally, tacos. Tacos, an entry that really ought to come with a couple of caveats. Number one, tacos, like a lot of popular dishes in America, aren't actually American. To which you are thinking, no they're obviously Mexican, but as I've spoken about a lot on this channel, Mexican food is very popular here in the US. As I've also pointed out, it has in recent years gained a foothold back in the UK, but I haven't been there for any of that. So I only encountered tacos, both the word and the food, in the years that I've been living on this side of the pond. And of all of the many Mexican dishes you can get here, tacos seem to be the one with which Americans are most obsessed. Basically, if you don't know what tacos are, then you're not from North America. You take a mini tortilla. I know how it's pronounced, I'm just messing with them. And you put whatever on them, chicken, guacamole, beans, salsa, and you wrap it up, usually badly in my case, and you just eat about maybe 3 of them. Personally though, I find it easier and maybe less messy just to have a quesadilla. Which makes me realise this entire list could have just been Mexican food. Well, if I've learned anything today, it's that talking about food makes me really hungry, because at this point I haven't yet filmed the bit where I eat the Factor 75 meal. I'm going to do that in a minute and I'm really excited. But I've also learned that there are a surprising number of American recording artists named after food. Who else have you got? The Smashing Pumpkins, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Pearl Jam. If you would like to watch more of me experiencing chicken fried steak and you haven't watched this video yet, you'll do that next. And until the next video, goodbye.